A Case of Mistaken Identities, on Purpose. May 24, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. In the course of explaining what has gone on here, I often get letters and emails about the attempts that people are making to address their grievances through the court systems. They triumphantly bring forward salient facts about the various venues of law and how they are supposed to work, but don't. For example, I recently got this statement that an unrebutted affidavit stands as law, which is true in the realm of commerce, if you happen to be operating in the realm of commerce, and if you own the entity that is named as a defendant, and if you are a person competent to make an affidavit in the first place. Which, generally speaking, you're not. So let's examine what is really going on in these foreign courts and why a living man is incompetent to operate in them, and why there is no enforcement even if you win. What they have done is to name a corporation after you for their own benefit. Think about that. It's not your corporation. It's their corporation named after you. So they get to run it however they see fit, put their managers in control over it, flow assets to it, drain assets away from it, bankrupt it if they please. And none of this actually has anything to do with you, except that they pretend it does, and you assume it does. Of course, you never knowingly or willingly agreed to them using your name to do any such thing. And it is your name, or is it? Who chose that name and gave it to you? Your parents. But who actually created that name? Who, for example, created the name Anna? Well, I can tell you for sure it was not my parents. Perhaps there has never been an Anna Maria Riesinger before. But maybe there has. And maybe there is someone of the exact same name running around out there at this moment. How many John Robert Cooks do you think there are? Or have ever been? If you add a few more details like the place I was born, it becomes easier to nail me down as the one using that name, but because a name is not in all probability created by your parents and may easily not be unique, either, is it your property? Yes and no. You have the right to use it, but it's not yours in the normal sense of property, is it? And it didn't belong to your parents, either. On top of which, you are not the only one who uses that name over the course of your lifetime. Your parents use it, your siblings and other family members use it, your school uses it, the hospital uses it, the library uses it, your employers and customers use it. It's what is commonly referred to in law as a utility. And though you use it, in a sense it isn't yours. So what recourse do you have when someone names a corporation after you and deliberately confuses you with it? This is a crime known as impersonation. We usually think of this in terms of pretending to hold an office we don't hold, as in impersonating a police officer, but it is more basic than that. Substituting a thing for a living man is an act of impersonating him. You are taking a living man, one of the people of this country, and transforming his identity into that of a person, a thing, a corporation, and in this case, a municipal person. And while it is illegal to rob or rape or murder a man, you can do anything you like to a person, because after all, it's just a dead thing and doesn't necessarily belong to anyone. This situation gives rise to every possible kind of crime being committed against persons, and that is why impersonation of a living man is a crime. That's why one of the most fundamental responsibilities of the federal government, spelled out in Article 4, is to protect your persons. And that is why these foreign courts, don't dare answer you when you accuse them of impersonating you and you nail down exactly what the thing they are addressing, as if it were you, really is. In the case of Anna Maria Riesinger being used to impersonate me as a purported citizen of the municipal United States, we know precisely how and under what false pretenses that person was created. We can, and do, cite chapter and verse and demand that the court cease and desist its attempts to misaddress us as a foreign person. We tell them very specifically that we are not any kind of municipal citizen and we do not allow them to address us under any such presumption. This odd kind of accidental on-purpose confusion can occur in another kind of court, too, and you can be impersonated using a name that, in form, looks just exactly the same as the name you have been using all your life. In a British territorial court, it is presumed that a British territorial citizen, also known as a U.S. citizen, exists who just happens to be a foreign situs trust, another thing, that they use to impersonate you, and which they use to subject you to various forms of British territorial law that has nothing whatsoever to do with you. If they can confuse you with their franchise and cast you into the role of a U.S. citizen, another person they own and control in your name, they will do that too. This transient person is only presumed to exist when she is on the high seas and navigable inland waterways, which can be hard to prove when you are standing on dry land, so they try to avoid using this ruse and typically resort to this only after you have beaten them in municipal court. Both the municipal courts and the territorial courts are literally engaged in organized crimes of impersonation on our shores, and they have been for a very long time. At which point of realization, it behooves you and me and everyone else to sack the politicians responsible and bring international complaints against the perpetrators and get organized to put an end to this, because it is flagrant crime against innocent Americans being perpetuated by self-interested foreign governments acting in breach of trust and in violation of their own commercial service contracts. Read that, this is being done to you by your own public employees. And they are being misdirected to do this by the feckless politicians. And the feckless politicians are being told what to do by the Vatican and the British Crown Corporation. And they, in turn, are working for the Holy See and the Queen and the Lord Mayor of London as subcontractors hired to provide us with stipulated government services, none of which include impersonating us for fun and profit. Now, if this is making you murderously angry, it certainly should. However, the proper way to address this is directly to the actual principles, and in order to do that, you must be acting in your correct and explicit role as an American state citizen. This is the only capacity in which you can act to enforce your constitutional guarantees, and because you have been deliberately impersonated, that is not terribly easy to do. They will still strive with might and main to accidentally on purpose mistake you for a similarly named British territorial person or a municipal person of a similar name. Thanks to the work of the Living Law firm, it has recently become much easier to assert your actual identity and defend yourself from these predatory courts and their employees, but you still have to grab an oar and pull. And you still have to thoroughly understand the game of mistaken identities they are playing. The solution to this situation is to declare your political status and record it with your state assembly, which is now in session, and accept the responsibility of self-governance. Take care of your own business. Start telling your employees what to do, and running your own courts again. The solution was clearly enunciated back in 1866 in the Supreme Court case Ex parte Milligan 71 U.S. 2. When we assemble our civilian government via our state assembly and populate the land and soil jurisdiction of this country, all those foreign courts, both territorial and municipal, have to stand down and stop addressing us, unless of course, there is an actual and valid maritime, commercial, contract or admiralty issue to settle. So we know the problem and we know the answer, and all that is left to do, is for you to come home and conduct your own business. Join your state assembly without further delay if you care about this country and your future in it. And if you are scared of the federal government, run, don't walk. Many confused patriots are afraid of government action against them, and they have reason to be afraid, based on the many people who have been railroaded by federal courts and the generally lawless atrocities that have been perpetuated by our off-course public employees. These crimes against Americans have been based on the legal presumption that they weren't actually Americans. Mistaken identities again. Name games. Political status presumptions. And we are putting an end to those presumptions. We are establishing our political status and identities in ways they can't evade or ignore, and when we do so, we find that, like magic, our erring public employees don't give us any guff anymore. They just get back to work and tend their knitting with entirely new attitudes. But if you want to change their attitudes, you first have to change yours. We, state assembly members, have a yellow lapel pin that makes the situation obvious. It simply says, "Public notice, I am not your employee or dependent." And if that doesn't jog their thinking processes, you can look Johnny Copper in the eye and tell them the fundamental fact: I'm your employer. Go to www.theamericanstatesassembly.net. Join us for our Monday night Zoom calls. Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thanks for watching, liking and sharing.